and you was in the possession of a firearm, that means you're an addict in possession of a firearm. That's a whole nother case. Now, even though you can beat them on the gun case, ex-felon in possession of a firearm, but you can't beat them on the addict because that's a whole nother case. And that goes back to human trafficking. They build law. It's Terrence Hatchett versus the United States of America.
Yeah, we on Boss Talk 101. Yeah, we gonna talk.
I want to ask you about, man, my boy, man, Boosie, man. Like he was out. I catch him coming out of court with his lawyer in was that in Sacramento? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when they coming out of court, he looks as if he's won this case, and he comes out and they celebrating the win, and the next day immediately he goes on to Vlad TV, asking pretty much, will you be able to, he said, let's talk about the case. You won the case. Go ahead and tell us. Now we're going to talk about everything that happened. And so the first thing he asked him about, within not even 2 sentences into it, is about this gun. And then they start to talk about this gun. And after they talk about the gun and the situation and all the stuff that he had going and everything with this case, boom, the next day he's re-indicted. Now his lawyer gets on TV. She says they're about to go in and they have to fight the federal case. He has to turn himself in within the next week. They tried to get him that day, but she was like, he's been doing everything right. Why we got to go get him now? I want to understand from your perspective how serious this is now that the feds have taken on this case outside of the state prosecution. Now the feds working with the state prosecution have added this case to him. I know I'm saying a lot, but also now he's saying he's a drug addict. So they add being a drug addict to it, which they wasn't showing that at first. What was the reason for you think adding the drug situation to it, and why do you think how serious is this case going to be?
Okay, let me put it in context. I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna go here. Okay, so first of all, you ever heard of human trafficking?
Yes.
So in human trafficking, initially it was for taking underage girls across the state line and turning them out, having sex with them in prostitution, right? A lot of guys, got caught up, and some of them beat the case because the broad wasn't old enough or the feds didn't have enough evidence. So what the feds do, what a lot of people don't understand, when we sleep, they make laws. So they enhance the title of human trafficking. So it's now, if you take a woman to a strip club and you living off the earnings of prostitution, that's human trafficking. If you got a girl and you turn her out and you put her on the track, and I get the girl from you, then that's aided in the bed. They can get us for human trafficking. They can charge both of us. If you find a woman out there and she's been hoeing for 3, 4, 5 years, and she's a pro, not a hoe, she's a pro. She's been doing it for a real prostitute for 2 or 3 years, and you end up with her, she like you and she pay you, that's human trafficking. If you go to a hotel and you drop a woman off to turn the date with a trick, if you got the key in your pocket and she got a key in her pocket, she said, here, hold this key. And they got a sting operation, it's an undercover officer, and they find that key, that's human trafficking. They expanded the law. So what they're doing with Boosie is that it's called ex-felon in possession of a firearm. How do that work? So if you got a gun, they're gonna charge you with a possession of a firearm. That's a state case, right? So after the state case do what they do, if you beat the case or they give you a year or 2, then the feds got a separate case. It's called ex-felon in possession of a firearm. It's a whole different case, right? So what you see is they charging Boosie initially with ex-felon in possession of a firearm. But because of law, and the appellate court took another guy and said that he's going to get off because his argument was that, hey, I'm an ex-felon, but I never had a violent crime. So therefore, I didn't violate the statute. So the judge ruled in his favor. Boosie lawyer used that same ruling to get get Boosie off the case. Now, with that's called precedent. Law set precedent. So whenever something happened like that, then that means that other convicted felons can use that as a means to get back in court on appeal, right? So it's called case law. So that became case law. So now that it became case law, now that put the whole system in peril, because you're gonna have all these guys filing on this, and you're gonna have multiple men being let out of prison, which would probably become a Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court will have to make a ruling. So that's the scenario you have. But what they found out is that it's another, give you an example about the drug thing. If me and you were selling drugs and we sold drugs within 100 miles of school, that's a whole nother case. You're selling drugs and you're selling drugs by a school. That's two different cases. Well, if a person is an addict, or you're a known drug addict, and you'll say your urine is dirty within a 30-day period, then that means that, and you was in the possession of a firearm, that means you're an addict in possession of a firearm. That's a whole nother case. Now, even though you can beat them on the gun case, ex-felon in possession of a firearm, but you can't beat them on the addict, because that's a whole nother case. And that goes back to human trafficking. They build law. It's Terrence Hatchett versus the United States of America. The biggest attorney, the DOJ, the biggest thing in the world, the biggest criminal enterprise in the world that controls everything. And they are also connected to who? The president, because it's the president, DOJ, or they're connected to the Congress. All the attorney generals answer to the Congress and to the president. So what that mean? All the attorney general got to do is say, hey, look, we have an issue with this human trafficking law. We have an issue with these gun charges. These guys are going to be beaten. We need you to add amendment, change the amendment and add that to the case. And that's what Boosie experiencing. Now, in the case of Vlad, my lawyer taught me over 40 years ago, always live your life like you're on trial. If you hear me in most of my interviews, I'm either going to talk in the third person, or I'm going to talk about some stuff that I know the statute is over with. When you're speaking on I call it a megaphone, because this is the media, on a megaphone, every time you speak, you subject yourself to being exposed to criminality. You have the right to remain silent. That being, if you don't remain silent, anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. That's the situation that's going on with Young Thug. They trying to use his music, when he talked about somebody's mama house getting shot up, and he said in music, and they trying to go past the Fifth Amendment and bring that into the equation. So that's the problem that, not Boosie in particular, but most guys in particular. When you go on Vlad, in the case of Keefy D, when you go on Vlad and you get to talking certain things, and you go on these different media platforms and you get to speaking about stuff that you know that actually happened in the context in which way it may happen, you got to remember that the district attorney and the investigative detectives, they have that same information. They're just trying to corroborate it. They're trying to make sure that what you said corroborate with what they have on their files. I
want to ask you, Boosie said when he first met this guy, the prosecutor, the judge, he said that I believe he said it was an old judge, and he said, "Wipe me down."
But he
knew the lyrics already.
Well, the best example that we have of that, Brother E, just look at the O.J. Simpson Las Vegas case. Here's a situation where a man was retrieving his property. He was making a citizen's arrest on his own property. But because we're talking about criminal justice, criminal justice is a system. It's a bureaucracy. So you're talking about a system that spans across the United States. So Boosie beat murder cases. He beat the death row. I know because I'm the author of his book. I know the whole story, and I actually got the documentary coming out about it. He beat all these cases. Just like they never forgot OJ. they're going to never forget Boosie. They're going to always have a vendetta with Boosie. They're going to always have a vendetta with anybody that ever beat them. And it's like a Crip and Blood type thing. You know what I'm saying? You shoot one of my homies, I'm going to shoot you. Well, if you beat one of my district attorneys, we're going to try to get them for you. You know what I'm saying? We're going to try to retaliate. We're going to do a drive-by on you. Mm-hmm. And that's what Boosie experiencing. He's experiencing a drive-by by this district attorney who's trying to revenge something that happened in Baton Rouge.
Wow.
That's what it is. You know
That's
what I'm saying?
all it is.
That's all it is. And you know, and black men have to understand, you know, not only are we a target, you and I spoke about this with Puffy and R. Kelly and Bill Cosby. You know, it's a permanent target on our back because white supremacy say that all black men are inferior. And you could tell by what's going on with, you know, some of the remarks that is from the former president, Donald Trump. Some of the things he's saying, she's dumb as a rock, you know, she's stupid, she's illiterate. He's talking about Kamala Harris. You know what I'm saying? That's just typical of the perception that Europeans or white folks have of us. You know, so they already feel that we suffer from an inferiority complex, that we inferior. So a lot of times they have to do certain things to substantiate our inferiority. And that's all you see. You see these people who, Boosie, who's very successful, Puffy, who's very successful, R. Kelly, Bill Cosby, very successful. You see them pulling the skirt up on them and bringing them down. And that's going to happen. And it didn't happen. It happened with Huey Newton. Happened with Fred Hampton. It happened with all of the greats. You know, Malcolm X. You know, I mean, there has always been a disdain for the African American men, you know, by our European counterparts.
Yeah, we on Boss Talk 101. Yeah, we gonna talk.